Hello and welcome to MAF Speaks. It's our pleasure today to be interviewing Ted Falk, who's the Member of Parliament for Provencher. And so welcome, Ted. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Thank you very much, Brad. Good to be here.
Thank you. Hey, just as we start, I wanted to ask how you and your family are doing just in the middle of COVID and just, all that means. How are you? How's the family?
Doing actually quite well. I'm spending my first week here in Ottawa since the Christmas break. So it's first day of February, first week back for me. It's a rotation. 1 week out of every 3 sitting weeks is when they're asking us to be here in Ottawa now, just to keep the numbers down.
Sure.
The family's doing good. My wife just broke her ankle a week and a half ago at
Oh.
home. And so she's kind of laid up right now for the next 6 weeks. And we've got family and friends that are providing lots of help and support while I'm away. So that's working out okay.
Oh, sorry to hear that, but good that you've got support. I mean, just simple stuff like getting support in the middle of COVID is a challenge, right? Like
It really is, especially when there are restrictions as to group sizes and the
Yep.
number of visitors that you're allowed to have in your home, and even the designated people that are allowed to be there. So you got to kind of work around that a little bit and be creative.
Yeah. So we chatted a bit before this. I know that you've been elected as MP for your riding 3 times. Congratulations. That's awesome. Can you tell us what it's like to be an MP? I'm sure there are lots of us that have ideas for what that's like, but what's it like for you?
Well, there's lots of different aspects to it, whether it's being a member of parliament in my hometown or in my constituency, or being here in Ottawa. Every day when I walk into the House of Commons, I just marvel at the opportunity I have to represent my constituents in Ottawa, and I pinch myself sometimes, like, is this really real? Like, am I really walking into the House of Commons representing, the southeast corner of Manitoba, and being their voice in government? It's an incredible experience to be able to sit there and to take your seat in the House of Commons and actually be able to verbalize the things that are important to you and your community.
So the first time you ever walked in, I mean, did you have a bit of an aha moment? Like, wow, I'm really here. That must have been pretty special.
Yeah, I can still remember when I first got elected. Prime Minister Harper was still the Prime Minister. My very first day in Ottawa started by having a light brunch at his house at 24 Sussex, and then arriving at Parliament in his motorcade, in his armored Suburban, and walking into Parliament with Mr. Harper and being introduced to the caucus. And my head was swirling when well-known politicians were congratulating me and welcoming me here. I couldn't even place them, who they were, and names were lost. I still remember the feeling of that day, just the awe of it. And then my first speech, asking my first House question in the House, to stand in your spot and to be able to speak, just an incredible feeling.
Yeah, well, congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment that you've been elected 3 times. That's great. I know you're a pilot, and I'm told you own a Mooney. Can you tell us a bit about your passion for flying and when you started, and just talk to us a bit about that?
Sure. I was always intrigued with airplanes and air shows, and I'd attend as many as I could get to. Did a lot of the airplane museums. I knew Harv Penner really well from Harv's Air Service.
Yes. Yeah.
And so I was familiar with that. Probably when I was about 30 years old, my wife bought me a birthday present of having a ride in an airplane piloted by Harv, and of course I was actually quite scared. I'd never been in an airplane before, and so that was a very fearful moment for me. And in fact, the weather wasn't ideal the day that she had scheduled it for. So Harv said, if you're at all apprehensive, let's wait for a nicer day, which suited me actually just fine. And then I began actually developing that interest in aviation by flying model airplanes, and joined the RC community, and flew that for a while until I understood that airplanes don't fall out of the sky for no reason. There's usually pilot error that's involved, but every once in a while it's actually mechanical. But even when that happens, there's ways to safely get an airplane to the ground. So that also built my confidence. And then I had an employee working for me in the construction company that asked me if I wouldn't join him taking ground school. And I thought, well, that's harmless enough. not
Because
realizing that once
that's
you're,
on the ground.
yeah, well, but not realizing that once you're actually in ground school, there's going to be lots of pressure to actually fly an airplane, which
Mm,
there was. And I can still remember the very first time when my instructor said, "Okay, I think you're okay to go solo," and how enormous a small Cessna 152 suddenly felt when it's just you and
ah,
God in that airplane.
yeah.
And
Mm.
actually and it's like he told me, any idiot can take off but try and land the thing. And I remembered that after I took off, and I thought, oh, well, now we'll see just how much of an idiot I am. And as it turned out, I landed, and I've landed many thousands of times since then.
Mm. Now, the million-dollar question, will your wife go up in the aircraft with you?
She's not fond of flying,
Okay.
from an apprehension perspective, she doesn't have any issues flying with me or anyone else, I suppose. But
Yeah.
she flies with me quite a bit. A favorite thing that we used to do in summers is to attend a lot of fly-in breakfasts.
Yeah.
And she said, if you attach food to the other end, then I'm willing to go anywhere. And so we would go out for, a lot of breakfasts, but also the $100 hamburgers. We'd fly over to some, communities within an hour's reach or something, and
Sure.
walk over to a burger joint and have a burger and fries.
Yeah. Now, I know it's quite a hike, but have you flown to work? Have you flown to Ottawa?
I haven't. No, it's pretty, our schedule is pretty time sensitive, whether I'm here in
Yeah.
Ottawa or back in the riding.
Yeah.
And I'm only a VFR pilot, so I don't have an instrument rating, and I just wouldn't be able to afford for the weather not to be 100% both ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I've been intrigued with the notion of doing that sometime, and I'd like to, but as long as I'm under a tight schedule, it doesn't work.
So, how is it that you came to hear about MAF, and what's your involvement with MAF?
Well, I came to hear about Missionary Aviation Fellowship in our church.
Okay.
Occasionally we would have people doing a presentation in our church on a missions night or on a missions weekend. Uh, Somebody would set up a booth, introduce people to, and you could pick a pilot. And I've known several pilots over the years that have worked with MAF. I know Fred Heyer. He comes from our community, and he flew for a while. And there's a Jonathan, I forget his last name, was as piloting as well there for a while. And so I've had some exposure that way. And Ed Voth, who is part of the RC community, who actually flies at a field at the back of my construction yard that we've kind of donated for the local RC club to use as a flying field.
Mm.
And I'm in constant communication with Ed on different issues, but he's been a very passionate advocate for MAF in our area, and he advocates for you guys on a regular basis and keeps me posted as to what's happening.
Yeah, neat. And I'm told you have quite an extensive business background. Can you just touch a bit on that?
Well, my wife and I, we co-own with another couple 2/3 of a construction company called Diamond Construction and Gravel, and she owns a company called Whitestone Construction and Gravel with my partner's wife. We're in the heavy construction and aggregate business, and so we operate a dozen different gravel pits and operations, as well as we've got a staff complement that builds roads, subdivisions, commercial work, residential,
Mm,
agriculture work, and we have just over 100 employees. I've got a fantastic manager,
mm,
Doug Ham, who looks after both businesses, and in my absence, does a great job of steering it. And my partner, who owns a third of the company, is also an aviation enthusiast, and he builds RV airplanes. And he's built and completed his second Vans RV 12. It's 12 that or 14 that he's built now,
mm.
and so he's as passionate about airplanes as I am.
And so how long have you been in that business?
I started out there as an employee, as a bookkeeper in 1989, and
Oh my
7 years
goodness.
later had the opportunity to buy out my partner's dad, and ended up with 2/3 of the company. And so for the last 25 years, I've been the president and CEO of Diamond Construction and Gravel. And during that time, I also became the president of the Steinbeck Credit Union. And I did that. I was on the board there for 24 years, serving
Mm.
16 years as the president and board chair. And today that organization is just over $8 billion. And
My
so
goodness.
I'm no longer on that board. Once I became a member of parliament, it just became too busy,
Yeah.
and the membership thought I should focus my efforts on politics and on what they invited me to do for them in Ottawa.
So this next question, I have a bit of a personal interest in as well. What on earth motivated you to move from business, where you're a successful businessman? I mean, I'm sure there's challenges, but things were going well. And why why would you move to politics?
That's a very good question because I thoroughly enjoy business. I always wanted to be a businessman my entire life, and business has worked well for us, for our family. God has really blessed us in both of our businesses, and I was comfortable. I had my family close by, enjoying my balance of work life and community responsibilities. My church life was great. I was involved usually in somewhere in the church leadership of our church, and so a combination of family and business and church and community was really working well for me. And then our member of parliament resigned midterm, Vic Taves, and my phone started to ring, and people started inviting me to consider becoming the member of parliament for the area, or at least letting my name stand. And I resisted that the first couple months, and I said no, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. I was busy. I had my plate full.
Yeah.
And I came to Ottawa for a credit union conference as the board chair, and I came off the airplane, opened up my phone, and I checked my emails, and there was an email from one of our local politicians, and he said, just giving you a heads up, tomorrow your name is going to be in the Free Press listed as one of the potential candidates to succeed Vic Taves. And I says, well, that's great. Who put it in there? He says, I don't know. I'm just telling you what I do know. And so I of course, checked the paper the following day, and they did list me as a potential successor. And so I kept telling people I didn't do it, or I didn't want to do it. But then I made a very strategic error, and I committed to people and to myself that I would pray about it. And and so I did. And so my wife and I, we spent an evening in our barn, which the loft of our barn we've converted into kind of a ministry center. And we spent the evening there just talking to God, to each other, reading scripture and spending time in prayer and trying to discern what God's will for us in this opportunity was, whether this was a direction that he wanted to move us or whether this was something that we weren't to pursue. By the end of that evening, through lots of prayer and discussion and tears, uh, we came to the reality of knowing that this is the direction that God wanted us to move at this point, and that he would provide already for our business. And it wasn't something that it was a passion that we wanted to do, but it was something that we felt called to do. And so after that evening, we said yes, we would put our name in forward as a candidate, and we did, and then we got elected a few months later, and so here we are.
Yeah, and I mean, you worded that better than I, just when you spoke about work-life balance. I mean, it's tricky enough to get that correct when you own your own business. I mean, I certainly remember that from when I had my own business, and then adding this, it really is a family decision, as you
It
say.
really is, because when Parliament sits, when there isn't COVID-19 around, then for at least half of the year, you're in Ottawa and your family's at
Yeah,
home. So we had to set up guardrails and boundaries that that we knew would be important in our relationship. And with technology the way it is, we have a practice that every evening, once I get back to my hotel room, that I will FaceTime her, and we will have a debrief for the day. She'll tell me about her day, and I'll tell her
yeah,
about mine, and then together we pray together and we say goodnight.
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. I mean, technology is really amazing in that way. Even when I travel with MAF and I'm in Africa, I'm able to connect with the family almost daily, right? And
Right.
that's pretty neat. I smiled to myself when you said that when you were in Ottawa, you got a call saying your name would be in the paper the next day. And I'm sure that was the beginning of your relationship with the press, where not everything they said was true, and you weren't even elected yet. So
Yeah,
that's
that's a
quite.
whole nother issue.
Uh, Ted, I understand you have 10 grandkids. And really, when I read that, I have 4 grandkids, and that keeps me pretty busy. You've got to be extra busy with that.
Yeah, and four of our grandkids have moved away with their parents to Southern Ontario, so we don't see them quite as frequently. Uh, but we do have six. My oldest daughter has six children, which are my grandchildren, and so they only live about 10, 15 minutes away from us. We see them a fair
Sounds
amount, and they
good.
come over a lot. And yeah, it's that's a real blessing in our lives, just to watch them grow up
Yeah.
and just develop and you know when their parents are very passionate about teaching them God's word,
Hmm.
and when they can sit down and recite you know a dozen verses in a text for you, that's to me one of the most exciting things. They put me to shame with their memory
Yeah.
program.
Yeah. But passing on that legacy from your generation to your kids, to their kids,
Yeah.
that's, yeah, I think of that expression, if I'd known how much of a blessing grandkids were, I would have had them first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Of
You know,
course, that doesn't quite work, but
it doesn't work. No, and I remember once when our session was starting again here in Ottawa, we were together as a family, and my kids asked if I would kneel, and I did, and my grandkids all came around and they put their hands on my shoulder and my head, and they all prayed for me as a group.
wow,
And you know, for that was really powerful for me, that I got a family behind me, you know, that loves me, that's loving Jesus,
yeah,
and just wanting to do what's right.
yeah, that's not,
Yeah,
wow, that's powerful.
yeah.
You know, my wife and we obviously talk about politics sometimes at dinner, and sometimes you hear about things that don't make sense. And I've frequently said to my wife Darlene, I've said, look, it's really important that we have good men and women, good Christian men and women in Ottawa representing our faith. What does that look like for you to live your Christian walk in politics in Ottawa? Because I mean, there's just got to be issues that are not that you're going to compromise your values, but that are challenging, or that you don't go the way you want, or like that. It's got to be hard. So what does that look like for you?
You know, Brad, that's a great question, because when I first came to Ottawa, I was very unfamiliar with what it would be like, and just from the stories I'd been told, I thought, you know, I'll be this lone sheep among many wolves,
Hmm.
and it's not quite like that. There's a lot more Christians in politics than I had anticipated there would be, and there's a real core group of solid believers that are parliamentarians, or you know, whether they're senators or members of parliament, and we meet together weekly for prayer and for Bible study, and that's
Hmm.
been a real encouragement here. But there are difficult issues that you have to deal with, and especially the ones that aren't black and white. And you know, and as I've done that, I've tried to do it in a way that is open and honest and with integrity. And I think my constituents have recognized that, and they've supported me. And I get a lot of encouragement, probably even more than I would have anticipated, from people in the community that say, "Hey, you know what? We got your picture on our mantle, and we pray for you every day." You know,
Awesome.
and that's been a real encouragement for me, and I've found that to be the case in many instances. As I travel around and I meet people I didn't even know, but they say, "Hey, you're our representative. We know the values that you stand for. We know that
Mhm.
we read about you sometimes in the paper when the media is taking a shot at you,
Mhm.
and we know that you're standing up for things that we value as very important. So thank you."
You may have already been good at this, but have you had to develop or further develop your ability to listen and debate and interact with people that you might just be diametrically opposed to their opinion? How has that looked for you?
Well, yeah, there have been those instances, of course, and um, you know, I've tried to look at it from the perspective, you know, these people are as much loved by God as I am,
Mhm.
even though they maybe don't agree with my position on certain things. These people are actually sincere in their beliefs, and
Yeah.
it's my job to be able to convince them in a logical way why they're wrong,
Mm.
or
Yeah. Or
why
why
I
you
think,
think you're right.
or why my position I think is the better position.
Sure.
And you know, I think there's amongst most parliamentarians, there is a respect among each other, that they're willing to listen to other ideas. I mean, and as long as it's done in a respectful way. You know what is seen in the House on CPAC is done for television. I would say
Right.
committee in camera is very different than committee or in public.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Hey, so my last question for you today, what has
All right.
been the most rewarding thing for you, personally or career, about being an MP?
Okay, well, I would say there have been several things, but you know, one of my jobs is when it comes to passing legislation, I'm always very happy when I can provide support for families and do it in a way that that the budget is still balanced. And I think that's rewarding when I hear people tell me how important it is that they received the support that they did. But probably the most rewarding aspect is not so much here in Ottawa, but it's back in the constituency office when people come in there with real needs and real problems. And because of your position as a member of parliament, you've got access to problem solvers that can help them fix their real life problems. And when you can
Mm,
help them, you know, sort through issues that are of a federal nature, I just find that terribly rewarding.
excellent. Good. Well, Ted, thank you for joining us. And I just want to thank you for being a Christian and running for federal government and representing Christian values. That's amazing. We need more of that, and I am certain that it is far harder than you've told us today. I'm sure there's lots of challenges. So thank you for doing that. And well, I know when I look at politics, that's one of the things that I see that I think would be challenging. So, you know, blessings on you as you navigate that, because that
Good.
I'm sure that's hard.
Yep. Well, it can be some days.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and thanks so much for what you do as an organization, and continue to do the good work. And you guys get to fly the nice planes. That's great.
I don't know. I had a look at the Mooney. It looks pretty nice.
Yeah, it's okay too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm blessed to be able to fly it. So I count that as one of my blessings as well.
for sure. Well, Ted, thank you so much for joining us. We
Good.
appreciate your time.
All
Bye
right.
for
Thank
now.
you very much. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Blessings to you. Bye.